We like to believe that our ideas are truly our own. But what if the way we think, believe, or understand the place we live in has been shaped long before we even learned to question it? This is where Louis Althusser has taken Marxist theory to a fascinating direction. To understand this theory of ideology, we need to understand how the reality is represented, how Marx understands the process of abstraction, and how ideology operates through both ideological state apparatus and repressive state apparatus. So today we are going to unpack how ideology doesn't only tell us how to think, it helps shapes the world we think we are freely choosing. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you are all doing well. If you are new to my channel, I am Dr. Riya Dattu and I make videos on English literature, language and literary theories. If these things are of interest to you, consider subscribing and follow along. So without further ado, let us begin the lecture. Who was Louis Althusser? Louis Althusser was a 20th century Marxist critic who lived in an age when Marxism was almost disintegrated or almost discredited as a theory of opposition to capitalism. He tried to defend the fundamentals of Marxism. Though he is not the first person to talk about ideology, his contributions are recognized with high esteem, particularly two concepts: ideological state apparatus and repressive state apparatus. These are expounded in his essay Marxism and Humanism in 1963. He defined ideology as the representation of images, ideas, and concepts which help us understand the world. Our thinking, conducts, behaviors, everything is affected by this ideology. Now we can talk about two assumptions. First assumption is that ideology constitutes the relationship between the reality of lived experience to historical reality. If we can relate to a particular ideology, we can understand the life as well as the world. So this constitutes our own experiences and the way we think about the world. The second assumption is the imaginary relationship with the real condition of existence. So we can say that ideology is not always true to those who follow it. It creates an imaginary world for us. So we forget our real condition, our real existence, and we are very happy in this imaginary bubble, in this world of imaginary. So it is clear that the focus is on the imaginary world in capitalism rather than on reality. What ideology does, ideology prevents people to understand the real world correctly. So if people do not understand the real world correctly, they fall victim to the capitalism. The idea that we need to make more money to be happy, this can be an ideology. This can be far from the reality, but we are happy to live in it because we believe that this is true. So Marxist's idea of society primarily consists of three things: base, superstructure, and ideology. But Althusser adds a fourth component, that is science. According to him, there are two prevalent discourses in human society at any time. They are the discourse of science and the discourse of ideology. So if Lyotard is read from postmodern point of view, there are two kinds of knowledge: the knowledge of science and the knowledge of narrative. So these discourses perform different functions in the society. The function of the science is to produce knowledge, and the function of ideology is not to produce knowledge. So ideology works in the fundamentals of recognition, we can say misrecognition or illusion. So therefore the theory of ideology is mostly pessimistic misrecognition. The example I had already given earlier about a lot of money, making a lot of money makes us happy, the concept. And who benefits from this concept? Capitalism. So the purpose of the ideology is to create this illusion and also take the people away from reality, or we can say the real condition. So it creates an imaginary relationship to the real existence. So let me read a paragraph from Althusser. He writes, ideology is indeed a system of representation, but in the majority of cases, these representations have nothing to do with consciousness. They are usually images and occasionally concepts, but it is above all structures that they impose on the vast majority of men, not via their consciousness. They are perceived, accepted, suffered cultural objects and they act functionally on men via a process that escapes them. So let me clear this in simpler language. So ideology does not produce knowledge because it does not function on the principles of creating knowledge or the principles of conscious critical thinking. It works on the fundamentals of unconscious or accepted beliefs or perceived models. So these are the principles of accepted notion, obviousness, popular culture, and also the majority of people who believe this ideology. So this is different world than the world of science. But we can say that ideology is not only one discourse, but it is a stream of discourses that prevail in the society. These can be political discourse, religious, moral, social, fashion, everything combined. And what we do? We imbibe all this according to our likings. And how does it work in the contemporary time? That is very obvious through media. Now we have social media and we see different kind of ideologies being plattered to us. Here we can briefly talk about historical materialism. This is also a part of this discourse. The function of this is to understand our material existence. For example, a labor and his understanding of the world, the skills and the shrewdness. But there is a problem. And the problem is through ideology we recognize ourselves. But in reality, this is misrecognition. An example is that we talk about ourselves, we talk about what we do as profession. So the thought that the work is a part of ourselves, this can be this misrecognition. So ideology works on the principles of allusion and illusion. So ideology alludes to the historical reality of our world. So in a certain way, it helps us to understand the historical reality, but simultaneously it also creates the illusion. So let's talk about realism and the process of abstraction as described by Karl Marx. That will help us understand all this a little better. So what is realism? So realism is about reality, the concrete reality of our physical world, the reality as it appears to us. So this includes everything a human being can conceive, perceive, touch, feel, and understand. And what is abstraction? Abstraction can be the virtual form of this reality. Something is like the reality, but not exactly reality. So this word is derived from the Latin word abstrahere, which means to pull from, extracted from reality. So the process of abstraction can convert the real concrete into thought concrete. This is the process of converting the real lived experience into ideas, perception. So the process of abstraction is the process of thinking, renaming, reconstructing the existing reality. But the question is, why is it necessary? Real experience is one thing, but if you want to communicate the real lived experience, it is necessary to go through the process of abstraction. So the ideas of perception, conception, description, formulation of ideas. So this is a conveying process, the mental activity. So the concrete reality cannot be swallowed. It needs to go through perception, conception, and communication. It rearranges, redefines, and reorganizes the ideas. We include and exclude certain things. So this is a dynamic activity. An example can be given. So if two people go through this train journey and they are asked to describe this train journey, the version of these two people will be quite different because of this process of abstraction. So when a person defines his lived experience through the process of abstraction, it becomes ideology a theory. An example can be given is that Marxism is the abstraction of our lived experience. So there are three different senses. Number one is it is the mental activity of subdividing the world into the mental construct through which we think about it. Second is this is the result of the process, the actual part into which the reality has been apportioned. It is a noun as well as a verb. The noun referring to the verb which has already brought this into being. Number three is refers to the suborder of particularly ill-fitting mental reconstruct, whether because they are too narrow, taken too little, focus too little on appearances, or otherwise badly composed. These constructs do not allow an adequate grasp of the subject matter. For example, the concept of freedom, the labor and the illusion of freedom. All the realities that are lived under capitalism are just abstract things. So we can very well say that abstraction is the world of thought. Now, what is the function of ideology? The function of ideology is to make people obey. The principle of ruling class is to keep the mass obedient through these ideologies. Two important tools at the hands of state to make the citizens obedient are ISA and RSA. They are ideological state apparatus and repressive state apparatus. So the relationship between the ruling class and the working class is based on exploitation. So why does a worker allow themselves to be exploited without any resistance? Because of the ISA and RSA. So ISA and RSA are the body of institution that the state has. If violence arises, these come into being. The state apparatuses contain the government, the administration, the army, police, the courts, the prison, etc. So these are the repressive state apparatus. So the word repressive suggests that these state apparatuses they function by violence, at least not immediate physical violence, but at the end ultimately the violence. So if there is a rebellion, there is the administrative or the army repressing that rebellion. So this repression can also take the non-physical form. So if the uprising comes against the ruling class, this RSA comes into action, and obviously they mostly function through violence as I mentioned earlier. But this ISA is interesting, that is ideological state apparatus. They function through non-violence. The ISAs are the religious principles, education or political or cultural communications. So through education, religion, politics and society, family, law, through all these the government tries to maintain the ideology. ISA was dominant in the prehistoric time or before capitalism took over. Religious places do not need to force people to come into the mosques or temples or churches. People go there by choice, but they are not that dominant in the contemporary society. Or are they? But we can say that education here is the most important. So during the time of Great Depression, America distributed the copies of religious books among people and says that Marxism teaches atheism. If we look through American history, we find no chapter on Great Depression. Marxism itself is not taught in any curricula in America. So education is here acting as propaganda, and they are maintaining one kind of illusion or the illusion of reality and that ideology. Nowadays, the most dominated ISA is media, social media, obviously. But it is not always true for the dominant class. It is also true for the opposition party. So we can say that is used in particular situations, but ISA is a continuous process, continuously molding the people to think in certain way. So I would like to pause here. There are so many more things to say on this particular topics. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and let me know if you want me to make more videos like this. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.